Hello, 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 and we're gonna get ready to roll. Welcome. Let me see, I should be turning this down. I'm always changing my setup. Faders everywhere. Okay, so we're here in March of 2023 in the beautiful Northwoods of Connecticut at Northwoods House of Sound and Fun. Not necessarily in that order. And today I'm coming to you in beautiful sunshine. In fact, I had to put up, you can see it on the ground, I had to put up a little block right here because this time of year the sun in the afternoon comes in hard on this window, which is beautiful for the space, but weird for the video. So today we're going to be talking about a bunch of things. First, let me just catch up with where I've been. It's been a very mild winter. I've been here. I'm going to leave town in the end of the month to go visit family. Other than that, I've been here. Even after COVID, I've still been here. I'm not going anywhere. It's still taking me a while to get up and out. This trip at the end of the month will be the first time I've flown since pre-COVID, so since 2020 February. Wow. It'll be fun. I think I'll see family. That'll be fun. So today, here in the studio, I'm going to cover a bunch of things. I'm going to go over some concepts. I'm going to go over some music. I'm going to try to develop this track a little bit further. I've not yet done a full song on the live stream, but I'm going to show you a few things that I do, and I don't know if it's going to work out yet because I don't know what it is I'm going to do yet, so let's just see what happens. First of all, let's see if I know which buttons to press here so I can get my beautiful logo embossed on the screen. Okay, so this is an idea playing here. Let me cut the modular rack. Actually, that bass line I think needs to be re-recorded, but I'll get to that in a second. Let me just show you what we're doing here. We have only a few tracks going on here. This is a bass. You can hear, I think the release has a little click on it. I recorded that from the keyboard, but I sequenced it here in these two yellow tracks up here in the corner, upper left-hand corner. These are the MIDI notes to those two bass lines you're hearing. So I think maybe we'll just jump right in. Let me give you a tour through this song. Here's a loop of some bells that I created, and I will come back to this later. I had the MIDI tracks, but they're deleted because I did a save as, because I'm not allowed to show you everything I used for this track yet. Maybe soon. And so this is just an audio bounce of the part that's playing the bells there, and then I've got this. Oh, and the bells, I forgot, they have a little tiny delay on them, just to give a little busyness, because they're really one of the only things on the track. Now, that will change here, so maybe the delay will change too. But the drums here are classic Rex loop rearranged. You can see the order of the notes is not the same as they would have originally been. So this is a Reason loop. It's from, I don't know how to explain it other than to show you. It's Hip Hop 22. Got it. Got it. And this is in the hip hop folder of the Rex drum loops in the Reason Factory sound bank. And this is one of those things where I went through and I grabbed the loop for the sound, not for the part, and then I rearranged the part. And that's a common way I like to use Rex loops is they're kind of close to the part, but maybe the bass drum pattern's not quite right, or the snare drum doesn't quite hit right. And so I'll replace one of the snares with a different snare in the same loop, just a later snare or an earlier snare, and then rearrange the bass. Don't know what here. So that was what happened there. And I changed it to this. So I put a hi-hat there. I just didn't want don't on the bass drum at first. I wanted just one bass drum. So one of the first things I'm going to do, which is what I was doing right before I realized I need to stop and save it for the live stream, is, and I'm using my Stream Deck. You can't really see it off camera here. I don't have my overhead camera aimed on it, but I'm using it more and more to get my way quickly around and navigate through the rack. Let's turn off the browser. So what I often do is I combine a organic Lucy Dr. Octarex. Oh, let me show you one more thing. The hi-hat was it the hi-hat? No, it was the snare. No, it was the hi-hat. Both of these are the same open hi-hat. You can see that they are like 200 instead of 240, which would wrap around to the next beat. So they are 40 clocks early. Yeah. So they're, because what happens there, something hits ahead of it, and then the open hi-hat, and it kind of flams, and then it was making the open hi-hat sound late. So now there's a sound that comes in a little early. I did this by ear. I just slid it over because it felt like it was late. And because of the fact I rearranged the beat, I needed to requantize it, which I don't normally want to do, but in this case it didn't sound right until I did, and then that made that one beat sound wrong, so I had to deal with that. Now I'm pretty happy with it, but it's kind of a going in and out of clarity. I don't know how to describe it. Oh, one thing I can do that I often do, that I don't know how many of you do this, is I'm going to take the decay down on the drums. Now this is the extreme. That would be way down. That's going to be too much. And that's probably not enough. So one of the things I'm listening for is that snare drum, which, the second one, or the first one, I'm sorry. 1, 2, the one on beat 2, the first one on beat 2. That one. It sounds a little gated, and I'm trying to make it sound a little less on and then off, and give it some decay. Now I'm going to go and look at redrum, because it's often the best tool to get a simple part going. And I'm really just going to go kick and snare, and I'm just going to use the built-in sounds. Let's see, that's the snare. This is the hip hop drum kit. It's very generic sounding, but I also find it to be very flexible sounding. So it doesn't sound too processed and nailed down. A lot of times you get these great big drum samples that sound fantastic, and then you want to make it brighter or darker or less compressed or more compressed, and it's already compressed about as much as it can handle. So you're kind of like, you can't go any further, and you can't really undo it much. You can mess with the decay, and that's what we'll do here. So let's get this going. Let's see. I got it muted somehow on the sequencer. Oh, if this ever happens to you, oh no, that's soloed. So if you mute the track in the sequencer, it won't play in the rack, and that little mute LED here will light up. And that's, if you're playing it and you're not hearing anything and you're not sure why, that's probably why. So we're going to add in some parts here, and we're going to play with the decay, the length rather, on the redrum. Here's a little interesting trick and concept. That is that the length of a sound, because we average what we hear as humans, the length of the sound can affect its loudness. So if I shorten this to an extreme, it's not very loud. It's actually going to be the same or very similar peak level because we haven't changed the level, but it's just not going to last as long. So the longer the sound, the more space it takes up, the more time it takes up, literally, the more space it takes up in the mix. So to make this kind of go back a little in the mix and get out of the way, we're going to do that. We're going to do it to the bass drum too. There we go. Now, I don't have the tone on the 4th slot, so I'm going to go over to this slot. Let's see, this is the bass drum. We're going to go out of bass drums to snare drums. And SD6 rare. That's the one we were using over here, SD6 rare. So I'm going to put that over here. Oh, it's already there. Okay, already got it. Now I've got to unprogram it from here and put it here instead. Okay, pitch is different. Let's null that out. Now I can make it brighter. Okay, that's already bringing it forward a little bit. Now, one of the reasons why I would quantize this Rex loop would be because I'm going to use quantized drums with the redrum, and I don't want a lot of flamming to go on. That's feeling pretty nice. Now, we've lost our bass. It's coming back in. Oops, I hit B. Watch out for the B key. Okay, so let's go back and do a little house cleaning. Hear that pop at the end of the note? I don't know what happened, but it wasn't right. Just happen to have the sound here, and I can turn on the MIDI and play it. And I got to turn the monitor on that track there. Now I got to adjust it a little brighter. Got more envelope modulation. Okay. Now let's make sure. Let me show you where the release was, all the way down, and it'll probably recreate that sound we heard before. No? Yeah, it's there a little bit. There it is. All I gotta do is bring the release up just a hair. About maybe 10% up on the release knob there. Now it's clean. All that for that one little issue. Here is my input list, by the way. If anybody ever asks me why isn't Reason more popular in the professional world, this is one of the issues. The fact that you cannot label your inputs. If I'm in Luna, I will just select the input that says Mini Brute 2S because that's what it is. If I'm in Reason, I have to refer to my chart and go Reason. Mini Brute 2S is 25, so make sure I have input 25 selected. So I've created the cheat sheet and it lives right under my monitor now, I wish I didn't need it, but it saves time. I could go into the console app for my universal audio interfaces and see the number there, but that's not always running, so this is a lot quicker. Rant over. We can get started on talking about why the volume automation isn't right in Reason, but that's for another day. Let's record this. Oh, I didn't check my levels. Go up a little bit. Hitting the yellows. There it is. Now this, if you ask me, why do I record all my audio and keep my software instruments all at minus 12 peaks on the meters? That is because it leaves the perfect amount of headroom for everything that follows, and it means I'll never clip. I have not clipped ever since I started. Maybe once when I wasn't paying attention. I don't know. Used to clip all the time because you are really fighting for every bit you can get on even digital tape that was always 16-bit recording back in the day. It was only with hard disk recording that we were allowed to come up to able to come up to 24-bit and now 32-bit even on some systems. But analog tape was even worse. You had to stay right up at the top of it to avoid the noise floor. So going over was not uncommon. By leaving 12 dB, I not only don't ever clip, but all my channels have a good amount of headroom for the mix. So my mix doesn't clip either because everything's already cut down just enough for the way that I work. And it just so happens that the Reason meters turn yellow right at minus 11 and above. So they're designed to record levels peaking around minus 12. And when I worked on the factory sound bank, it was requested all the sounds were recorded. I mean, we're set. If you made a bass patch, it was only going to play one note that needed to hit around minus 12. And if you played a pad, then 4 or 5 notes should hit around minus 12 if you're going to play chords with the part. So because of that, now this was Reason 6 sound additions, so the sounds before that were loud, and some of them don't conform to that standard. And there's nothing worse. There's a lot of things worse, but one of the things that has very few things that are worse than it is when you press a single note on a patch that you're on a new synth that you just got software, and you press a patch and it starts overloading already just one note. That happens more than you'd think. You need some headroom. If you're going to play one note and one sound, you still need to not clip. But then if you're going to add another sound to it or play more notes, which is like adding more sounds, you're going to overload eventually if you don't reduce the level and leave some headroom. So that's what we're doing. Now I'm going to record this over. This is not a loop, so I have to let it play. I could be listening to the other parts, but I want to make sure that this doesn't do anything. And it sounds good. I really love the Mini Brute for bass. I've got the Brute factor about halfway up. I can show you what that does after this is done. Actually, I'll do the next part. I'll just let it roll. Oh, it looped. Okay, undo. Let's go to the next bit. Now, I don't know if this part's going to last. This was my latest idea. So I basically have an A and a B part. And I'm going to let this go ahead and go all the way through, even though it's repeating. Then I just have 2 equal size audio clips. And I can replace all of these, which just go back and forth. Let's get rid of those. All right. So I let it loop and go back around to the top, hit stop, and then undo, which just undoes the little bit at the top. And that means that I've got a perfect audio loop there with no overlap, the way Reason works. All right, now I might not want these to play in all the sections before I had this muted out at the front, but I haven't decided yet how this is going to work. So this is harmonically weird right here. Okay, so one of the themes for today is sound design versus engineering. But before I do that, let me see if anybody's saying anything to me I need to respond to. One of my flaws is I get tunnel vision and get distracted when I'm on something, and I've got the screen up over here so I can watch the chat, but I don't watch the chat. I'm thinking of sounds and drums and basses and stuff. Okay, somebody's with me on the input labeling. Yes, input labeling. How hard can it be? Now, I know as a developer that's a loaded question because sometimes it can be hard. You've coded yourself into a corner. Could be a reason why they're not doing it. It might be harder than you think, but I wish they would. So now let me go over to my notes here. Sound design versus audio engineering is the theme I wanted to kind of discuss today. And the idea of, I've already touched on a few things. Pulling the decay down on the drums is kind of sound design, but it's also engineering. There's a lot of stuff that kind of goes between those two worlds. I would say as a very generic and limited definition, audio engineering is capturing sound that's happening and trying to be as faithful as possible to the original. And sound design is not that. Sound design is creating something and not having to be at all faithful to the original. The sound design and audio engineering worlds go back almost as far as each other, because I would say that early radio sound effects guys who were doing the sound effects live, like taking a sheet metal thunder sheet and rattling it for thunder or striking it for big thunder hits. I almost said lightning hits, but lightning is not what you hear. Lightning is what you see. And those guys were doing sound design in the early days, and it evolved from there. Definitely something in the film world that's more common, but in the audio world, it's also used to refer to somebody who's creating patches for a synth or otherwise creating a sound effects or sounds that are not strictly the music part. So it might be a riser or a transition or some sort of special effect in the song that requires you to create something, to manufacture it. Maybe it's a big, huge reverb that you're going to put on one snare so that when it hits, it hangs, everything stops, and it creates this moment in the song, what I call a POI, or a point of interest, where something really interesting is happening. So in our world, in Reason, and in anybody who's using synthesizers or drum machines or any of those tools, we are oftentimes creating stuff that doesn't exist. So we are kind of doing sound design. So I believe that the worlds have the lines have kind of become blurred, and you're doing both. For example, shortening the decay on these drum sounds is helping with making room for other sounds, and that's kind of an arrangement thing because I'm choosing a different sound, but it's also a sound design because I'm manipulating a sound. Let's talk about some basics here. Let me have a sip of water. There are three things, specifically talking about the length here. There are three things that can contribute to the loudness. Obviously, the level, the signal strength is the first one. And when you're mixing, you're going to be balancing faders first because that's where you have the most control over loudness. But then you have the spectrum and the envelope as well. The spectrum refers to the tone, the brightness of the sound or the fatness of the sound. And the envelope refers to the dynamics, usually the microdynamics, how the sound changes over time, whether it's a very transient short sound or whether it's sustaining. Let's get a little ambience going. I usually have a synth patch going, and I have this one in G for this track. Okay, I just hate that dead silence. So the envelope is about the shape of the sound over time. And envelope can also affect the tone or the pitch as well, but it's usually affecting the loudness primarily. And by shaping these things, we're messing with sound design, but we're also engineering. Let me show you something else that I was going to do. So this is an example of, that sounds louder. The hi-hat just got louder, right? It didn't get louder, it just got longer. It kind of, we can control where it sits in the mix just by the length of it. Now we could also take this sound and turn it down, but it's still kind of, I would say, it's a little messy. By doing this with the length, shortening the length, we're cleaning it up a little bit. We are literally creating space. People talk about carving out an EQ space. I say carve out some time space instead if you want to make space for things. That can mean using a shorter reverb or no reverb at all, not letting things ring out as long. And the busier the parts, the more that they have to take up less space, both in time and frequency domain. So what I mean by that is the time domain is how long they last. I brought some visual aids today. So some sounds, this is actually a little percussion instrument, but that sound is very, very short. Shakers are the same way, and any sort of bell sound is the same way. Now that's ringing, but the initial sound was a very sharp transient. Now that makes, in the analog tape world, recording these instruments was always a pain in the ass, because really the transient was so strong the VU meter would barely move to get it recorded well. And that was always confusing to me early on, because I'm barely seeing it move, but if I do it hotter than that, it gets all crunchy and distorted. So that's because the crest factor, which is the average versus peak level, was very high. So it had a very high peak level and then immediately went down and didn't have a lot of sustain. So any guitarists out there will know that you get sustain through compression and clipping and distortion, and you can be louder because of that. And if you have a short sound, it's not as loud, like I showed you with the length control over here on the hi-hat. All to say, all of these things are related somehow, and I'm going to try to, with any luck, tie it all together here at the end before it's all over. But before that, I'm going to get creative and show you something that I was about to do earlier and thought I'd save it for the stream. So let's make a sound here. Let's take this length control and map it to the control number 1, and let's throw in a pulsar LFO, and let's map that to control 1. And I'm doing this for a couple reasons. So you see we've got a little bit of length action. That's kind of what a drummer might do, maybe not in that rhythm, but now what we got here is easier to hear if I put on a square wave. So in this case, the first 4 are long. I'm sorry, the first 2 are long, the second 2 are short. Long, long, short, short, long, long, short, short. If we increase our level here, the distance between the 2 is greater. And if we adjust the phase, we can control which notes are longer and which are shorter. Now we're inverted. So the first 2 are short, the second 2 are long. Now we got long, long, short, short, long, long, short, short. A pickup to the downbeat. And the reason why I would do this through a control instead of directly through a separate CV input is because of the fact that it's really quick to offset it with the control. So let's turn that back. So if I now turn up this knob, then if you watch down here, you'll see that the whole thing is increased. The distance between the low and the high is the same, but it's now offset, which is just, we've added some to the signal, to both signals, so that they're both higher than they were. I can do the opposite too. And it doesn't have to be a square, and we can actually put a little lag so it's not a hard edge, but let's try a triangle. Now let's try an odd number. Let's push it a little bit farther so it's... Now I'm just trying to put some movement into the hi-hat here. Let's hear it in context because it's kind of easy to get lost in the solo world and forget that there's a whole nother world going on outside your window. Now the other thing I can do is play with panning, because that's kind of getting lost in the other hi-hat, but I don't know if this hi-hat is panned. No, in fact, at least in my headphones, yep, stereo is working, but the drum loop is mono. So I don't really have a way to separate out the hi-hat because it plays with the kick and snare in places. So I'm kind of stuck with that, but I can pan this hi-hat. And sometimes I'll do like an offbeat. Let's see, that's another hi-hat symbol. Let's make that one short too. And let's turn this one just to the upbeats. 3, 7, 11, and 15. There we go. So now that's even some more interest going on there. Let's turn that down. Okay. Now for the fun part. I have to figure out what's going on with the song. The song, not the beat, but the rest of the song. Okay, it occurs to me that I want to share with, when I watch videos, I'm always asking, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Not what are you doing, but why? So what I do at this point in the song is I'm trying to listen for another layer, another part, another element here that's going to work in context. And some of the things I think about are, should it be in a low range or a high range, talking pitch or frequency? Should it be a dark sound or a bright sound? Should it be a spotlight sound, something you're supposed to pay attention to, or a background sound, something that's supposed to be ambient? And is it busy or sparse? And that kind of relates to the former, the spotlight or backdrop. If you want to think of a stage, when I'm mixing, I often think of things visually. So I may think of when the vocalist stops, I imagine I'm the spotlight operator, and who do I move the spotlight to when the vocalist is not singing? Sometimes there's a lead instrument, so you'd move to the lead, and what that means in mixing, it means I'll push that up in the mix a little bit if it's not already. It's going to take over that place that the vocal left when the vocal stopped. But it can also just be a rhythm part. And sometimes that requires that you push things up, and sometimes that requires that the arrangement does that. And or you use some sort of ducking or mix compression so that it's happening automatically when the voice is not singing. There's room for other stuff to come up, and there's many ways to actually do that. So the why, which I'm trying to address here, is because I want to lead the listener through the journey. I want to take them on a journey and say, this is what you're supposed to watch now, or listen to now. This is what you're supposed to listen to now. And that's kind of part of what I'm doing with mixing, although I would say that I'm not really totally strict with that. That's not always the case. Sometimes I just let things go for a minute. But sometimes it's going to come down to, in this case, by bar 9, I'm bored. So let's go back. This is all good. This is all new right now. Okay, I see there's a pattern now. So about now, I'm like, okay. Check my watch, check my emails. I find myself tuning out, so I need something new to come in there. Now, it doesn't have to be much. It doesn't have to be hardly anything. It could even be a shift. I could bring that second hi-hat in there, but that might not be enough. So I'm going to do something. The first thing that comes to my mind is something kind of corny. I'm going to go for a traditional, I don't want to go too corny. I just went past it. Hang on here. Hang on, buddy. There we go. It's a whole folder missing. I want to do a string machine, classic 70s. Not a CS80, although that might do it too. Not a Farfisa. Did I pass it already? Not a Mellotron. Why am I not remembering what I'm looking for? Salina. There we go. That'll work. Now, I have terrible organization in the rack right now, but I might go back later and rearrange stuff. At the point where I'm in the moment of a creative process, I'm usually not organizationally oriented. To put it nicely, I'm usually thinking about the idea, and if I stop and try to organize things, I will lose the idea, and in the end, the idea is all you got. You can organize later, but you might not be able to get that idea back later. So this is going to fall into the high range, bright sound, almost spotlight, but kind of sparse. So let's go back to the sequencer page and put this in record. And go back a few bars. We don't have to go all the way to the top. And I'm just going to do one note. I'm going to try to be minimal. Oh yeah, that's all you need. Well, maybe more. Gotta do something else here. Okay, so that got me to the next part. I often will do that. I'll just go for something, even though it might be a train wreck, and then delete it if it's not working. Now, what I have going on in the next section, and you see I didn't stick with the one note thing. I did add a few more notes in there. But what happens in this next section is not clear. And it's time for me to make it clear. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mute this for a second for my head to be clear. Boom. Okay, so the song is in G, and it's actually G major. I'm not always in a major key, so that's kind of interesting. And in this next section, let's listen to what happens with the bell loop. It's still in G. Okay, but the bass line starts to do something different. So let's figure that out. Okay, so because of the notes played, that's E minor. Now, E minor is the relative minor of G major. So that's why the bells still work playing in G major, even though the bass line goes to E minor. That's your music theory for the day. That's about as far as I usually think these things through. I'm not trying to make something that works with music theory. I'm trying to make something that just makes me smile. I mean, that's my motivation. I want to have fun, make me smile. And so now I can try, let's go back a few bars and punch in. Let me just try E minor just play an E minor chord on the same string patch here. And I gotta get out of this. Okay. Oh, that'll work. The bells, okay, the bells go. So they're basically doing a G major, and then a F over G, which always reminds me of the 70s. That was a big thing to do in the 70s. And so when I'm in E minor, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go down a half step. I mean a whole step with my chords, and then the bass is going to stay in E minor. So let me go back and punch it. Maybe it's not going to work. Nope, that doesn't work. So I've got to rethink that section, and it could be, let me see what we got so far. It could be that this sound needs to drop out, and I need to come up with something else. And I've always been worried about this part of the song anyway. Okay, that's an awkward change, but I'm just going to go with it. A lot of times I find that the worst thing you can do is stop and get stalled. So I'm going to try to come up with some other way to get through this. I'm going to go with a new sound. Oh my gosh, this menu is just way too long for the Arturia stuff. That's why it was closed before. Now, I've got this wonderful J. Chris Griffin S73 electric piano, one of the best sampled electric pianos. I don't know what it is. It just sounds like what I think an electric piano should sound like. Now, in other news, I just found out a good friend of mine is going to sell me his 73 suitcase Rhodes, but it won't be here for another couple months. You'll probably be hearing me talk about it more because it's my desert island synth instrument, not synth. Acoustic piano is probably my first love, but I think electric piano, particularly Fender Rhodes, would be my second, close to the first. Oh, so close. I don't know which I would say, but it's definitely up there. And I'm excited to have one. I don't have, believe it or not, in this space, I don't have room for a piano. Maybe a little upright, but I will make room for a Fender Rhodes, and it'll probably go right here so that you can see it and so that I can reach it. I don't want it off in the corner somewhere. I want to be able to play it, even if it's something I trip over and it takes up space in the middle of the room here. I don't care. Now let's think of some other way to get out of this. Maybe it's the bells that are wrong there. Maybe it's the bass that's wrong. So let me just try some things. This is where you just gotta be bold and keep, like I said, keep going. Don't lose your momentum. Okay, I'll tell you what, I just recognized one thing that I would do there. I think what's not working for me, I think I need, if I'm going to use this section, great, but I think I need something else here entirely. So here's a great use of, where is it? Edit, insert bars between locators. Okay, so I'm just going to bump everything over, and we will, see, duplicate that. We'll keep the drums the same. Redrum's going to play because it's just a pattern. And I want to come up with another section here. And I don't know. Let's look at something. Sometimes I will transpose something and it'll work. This is happy accident time. So you got to hear the transition. Okay, Selina goes away for now. Nope, nope, nope. This is where you just got to keep trudging through. Oh, that sounds nice. Let's not use the change that's written into the pattern. Let's just copy that. Okay, I want to do the same key change I was doing before, but I'm getting rid of that bass line because I think that was throwing me off. So we're going to do the... Except for maybe not. I need to find a different pattern. I need to copy that. That's not the right chord. Let's try this. This is the joys of doing it live. It could be, that's all we need right there. So if that was the case, then I'm going to put the loop markers around the last of that bit there, and I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to remove bars between locators. Bam. And we're going to come back. This might not be the right section here. Probably sound horrible. Okay, now we're going to skip this and go back to our first part. Now, the problem with me starting with this song today was that I wasn't really happy with that B section to begin with, so I took a risk that maybe I'll find a solution here on the set of a live stream. I don't know if that's going to happen, but you'll see something, even if it's learning what not to do. Maybe my life will just be a warning to others, not so much an inspiration to others. Don't do what I did. Come more prepared. I'm still not really happy with the way that this changes here. I like the other thing better. It's a little too happy. Okay, that's not bad though. Coming back in without the bells. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that pretty much and start to wrap it up, because I was hoping to get a little bit something more developed here, but you don't always get that. Let's see if I can make something of this first part of the song so that I can at least leave with something accomplished. Yes. And I'm just seeing a comment probably from an hour ago. Is that my modular still humming in the background? Probably was. And now it's off. So that's not bad. That's not inspiring. So the lesson today would be, what do I do when I get to a point like this, where I'm throwing stuff at the wall and it's not sticking? Or I like to call this fishing. I'm probably using the wrong bait. Maybe I'm in the wrong location. I'm throwing the line in. I'm just hoping to get something. I'm not really having success, and so sometimes you don't end up with anything. But the basic sound was the bells and the bass line, and then that drum beat were the start of the song. You never know where it's going to go or not going to go. And in this case, I would probably, what I'll actually do is, not probably, but what I'll actually do is, after I'm done here, I got to take the dog for a walk around the yard, the property. Takes about 20 minutes to hike around the whole thing. And usually when I come back, I have a fresh perspective and a different attitude. And sometimes it's what it's required to break you out of a rut, because I keep hearing the first thing I did. I can't not hear that. Now, the only thing worse than having an A and a B section and not being able to break out of it is having an A section and not being able to break out of it. At least I have a B section, but I didn't come in with great confidence on the B section. And it wasn't like I picked my best idea to start with today. I picked the one that was currently on the burners in the studio, on my workbench, as it were. And I didn't make a whole lot of progress with it, but that's all right, because you got to see hopefully some useful stuff. I think, like, I haven't done this hi-hat trick before with modulating the length like that with a combinator, so that's a cool trick. I'll probably use that again. And I love that. I love the basic part of the song, and maybe it just needs to be that and not do this other stuff. Oh, that was nice. It looped. I didn't know it was going to loop. Okay, we're supposed to have the whole, let's hear the whole part in there. We gotta have the high note. And we'll probably bring that down in the mix. No. I can tell you that's not going to stick around. Although, now that's a weird conundrum. I really like the way it comes back to the original bass line, but I don't like the way it goes into this section. So that's nice. That harmonic change from the D chord back to the G there, I like that. And to be honest, I don't say those things to myself. I don't say that D to the G chord there is nice. I usually just say that part of the song is nice. I'm calling out the chords for anybody who's watching so that you can follow along. But it's not, I don't usually think in theory. Yeah, Hans is saying the bass line is certainly something to work on further. That can be taken either way. Either it needs work or it's something to build on. Maybe it is the bass line that needs to have some work. You know, if you take that completely out, you've got a very... I love the ambiguousness of this, like what chord are we actually playing, because it's playing thirds. So it's not even really playing a full chord at once. Actually sounds better without that bass line, but maybe we could come up with a better way to hold the bottom down. That's just a little too abrupt. Does anybody remember the band Talk Talk in their It's My Life album or song? They would do these chord changes to the most unexpected chord and make it work, and I've always tried to do that and always failed. I don't know how they got away with it, but they would do these like, wow, that chord, no. And it was, after you heard it, it was the most obvious thing ever, but the first time you heard it, it was, as a friend of mine in Nashville used to say, that quality that they like to look for, which is the head tilt, like a dog. Like, what is that I'm hearing? And actually, I'll leave you with that quote from a friend in Nashville who said that what he looks for in a song, he's a song plugger, Sony, and he said, I want to not know if I like it or not the first time I hear it. And his experience was, if he doesn't like it the first time he hears it, he's probably never going to like it. And if he loves it the first time he hears it, it's probably going to wear thin quickly and then not going to last. But the things that he doesn't know whether he likes or not are an indication that it's fresh and new, so your brain doesn't quite know what to do with it yet. And he says, more often than not, that's the phrase, that means it's something that's going to stand up over time. He's still going to like it in a week, in a month, in a year, and in years later. And so I try to do that when I'm working on stuff. I try to make stuff that is unexpected to me. Now, this is unexpected going here, but unexpected, but not in a good way. So I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to go out and do some forest bathing, get out into the woods, walk the dog, and get my head cleared. And then on my next live stream, I will come back, and if I have anything to show for this, which would be awesome if I do, I will present it. And let's see, next month at this time, I will have some friends here from out of town, some dear friends. We've made music together under the name Spacecraft before. Our claim to fame was that we have 20 seconds of music in the Vanilla Sky movie. Other than that, we played mostly planetariums and mostly improvisational space electronics and space music in Berlin school, sequencer-based stuff. Oh, Mark, why would you tell me that now when I'm trying to wrap it up? You got my interest. Try changing the meter to 7 at that break. Oh, I want to so bad, but I also know that that's a rabbit hole. I will try that, though. That's awesome suggestion, because I love odd time signatures, and I often get locked into 4/4 and forget to try anything beyond that. So I may try to do something with those guys for my next live stream. I don't know if they'll be here on that Thursday or not, but we'll see at that point. And for now, I'll just leave you with more of this beautiful, beautiful failure, or work in progress, if you prefer. And I do prefer work in progress to beautiful failure. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.